The sun was setting over the city skyline as a black Tesla Model S pulled up to Elite Motors, its sleek body reflecting the golden hour light. Behind the wheel sat a young man in his mid-30s, taking a deep breath as he looked at the gleaming luxury cars through the dealership's spotless windows. He had just wrapped up a long day of back-to-back meetings, still wearing his comfortable black t-shirt and jeans, his usual work attire as the founder of a successful tech company. "Today's the day," he muttered to himself, fingers drumming on the steering wheel. He'd been dreaming about buying his dream car for years, and after closing a major deal that morning, it was finally time. His company had just hit a major milestone, and he wanted to celebrate properly. As he stepped out of his Tesla, he couldn't help but notice how the atmosphere shifted. Through the glass walls, he saw several salespeople suddenly become very interested in their phones or paperwork. It was a familiar feeling, one that made his stomach tighten, but he squared his shoulders and walked through the front door anyway. The dealership's interior was immaculate, polished marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and rows of the world's most luxurious vehicles. A red Ferrari gleamed under perfectly positioned spotlights, while a midnight blue Bentley sat regally in the corner. The air smelled of leather and expensive car wax, with a hint of fresh coffee from the customer lounge. 3 salespeople stood chatting near the reception desk, all in crisp suits with matching Elite Motors badges. As he approached, their conversation didn't pause. He cleared his throat politely, but they continued their discussion about weekend golf plans as if he were invisible. After standing there for what felt like an eternity, he spoke up. "Excuse me, I'm interested in looking at the new Porsche 911 GT3. One of the salespeople finally glanced his way, giving him a quick once-over that lingered disapprovingly on his casual clothes. "We're quite busy with scheduled appointments right now," he said, despite the empty showroom. "Maybe try our downtown location. They might have something more suitable for your budget." The sting of those words was familiar, but it didn't hurt any less. He had faced this same treatment countless times before, at high-end restaurants, in business meetings, even in his own office building until people realized he was the CEO. Today should have been different. Today was supposed to be his moment of joy, of celebrating years of hard work. He watched as the glass doors swung open and another customer walked in, an older man in golf clothes. Immediately, 2 salespeople rushed to greet him, offering coffee and a tour of the showroom. The contrast was stark and unmistakable. Pulling out his phone, he checked his banking app, where the morning's transaction still showed clearly $50 million transferred into his company's account from their latest investor. If only they knew. But he shouldn't have to prove himself worthy of basic respect. He stood there for another 15 minutes, trying to catch someone's eye, watching as other customers came and went, all receiving immediate attention. His presence seemed to make the staff uncomfortable. They worked around him like he was an inconvenient piece of furniture they couldn't move. Finally, he approached the reception desk one more time, where a new face had appeared. The sales manager, based on his premium name badge. "I've been waiting for quite a while," he said calmly, maintaining his composure despite the frustration building inside. "I'm ready to make a purchase today, and I'd appreciate some assistance." The sales manager looked up from his computer, his expression a mixture of annoyance and disdain. What happened next would set in motion a chain of events that nobody in Elite Motors could have predicted, least of all the man who was about to be asked to leave. The sales manager's voice cut through the showroom like ice. "Sir, I don't think we can help you today. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of our competitors." He gestured vaguely toward the door, not even bothering to make eye contact. "We deal with a very specific clientele here." The words hung in the air, their meaning crystal clear. The young tech entrepreneur felt his chest tighten, but years of navigating corporate America had taught him to keep his expression neutral. Around him, the handful of other customers browsing the showroom had fallen silent, pretending to be deeply fascinated by their phones or the nearest car specifications. "I understand exactly what kind of clientele you deal with," he replied, his voice steady. "And I'm here to buy a car. I have the funds ready, and I've done my research. I know what I want." He pulled out his phone, ready to show proof of funds, though the mere fact that he had to was another small indignity to add to the pile. The sales manager held up his hand, stopping him. "That won't be necessary. We have the right to refuse service to anyone who we feel isn't a good fit for our establishment. He reached for the phone on his desk. Now, I can call security to escort you out, or you can leave on your own. Your choice. 2 security guards were already moving toward them, their walkies crackling with static. The young man looked around the showroom one last time, at the pristine cars, the nervous salespeople, the other customers who were trying their best to become invisible. This moment felt different from all the other times he'd been dismissed or underestimated. Maybe because he'd achieved so much, or maybe because he was just tired of swallowing these bitter pills. "You know what?" he said, straightening his shoulders. "I'll leave, but I want you to remember my face, remember it very clearly." He pulled a business card from his wallet, sleek, black, with raised silver lettering, and placed it on the manager's desk. "Because we'll be seeing each other again soon." The security guards flanked him now, their presence unnecessary but clearly meant to intimidate. As they walked him to the door, he could feel everyone's eyes on his back, could hear the whispers starting up. But he walked with his head high, his mind already racing with plans. In his Tesla, he pulled out his phone and made 3 calls. The first was to his lawyer, a top corporate attorney who'd helped him navigate his company's rapid growth. "Hey, I need you to look into something for me." "Elite Motors. I want to know everything. Their financials, their parent company, any pending lawsuits, everything." The second call was to his financial advisor. "Remember how we were talking about diversifying investments? I think I found something interesting in the automotive sector." The third call was to an old friend who'd become a major player in luxury car sales on the West Coast. "Hey, remember that conversation we had about expansion opportunities? I've got a proposition for you." As he drove away from Elite Motors, he caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. The same reflection that the dealership staff had judged so quickly, had dismissed so easily. They had looked at him and seen what they wanted to see, missing everything that mattered. But soon they would see him very differently, because he wasn't just going to prove them wrong, he was going to change their whole world. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better, about creating change that ripples out far beyond a single moment of prejudice. He smiled as he merged onto the highway, remembering something his grandfather used to say: "Success is the best answer to those who doubt you." Well, he was about to give them an answer they'd never forget. The sun had fully set now, and the city lights were coming alive. Somewhere in that glittering skyline was his office, where the paperwork for his company's latest triumph still sat on his desk. By the time he was done, that paperwork would be joined by something new: the deed to Elite Motors itself. Back in his downtown office, the young tech CEO sat in his chair, looking out at the city lights. His laptop showed multiple tabs: Elite Motors' financial reports, their corporate structure, and an article about their parent company looking for buyers. What the dealership staff didn't know was that their prejudice had walked in at exactly the wrong time. That morning, he had closed a deal that valued his software company at $50 million. The contract was still sitting on his desk, the ink barely dry. His company's app, which helped small businesses manage their inventory and finances, had caught the attention of major investors. 5 years of coding until sunrise, endless pitches, and countless rejections had finally paid off. He spun his chair around as his lawyer walked in, carrying a thick folder. "You were right," she said, dropping the folder on his desk. "Elite Motors is part of a larger group that's been struggling. They're quietly looking for buyers for several of their locations. This one included." He picked up the folder, flipping through pages of financial statements and legal documents. The dealership's flashy exterior hid some serious problems: declining sales, high staff turnover, and several discrimination complaints swept under the rug. "What's the asking price?" he asked, already pulling up his banking app. His lawyer named a figure that made him raise his eyebrows. It was steep, but not impossible. Not anymore. "They're trying to sell quietly," she added. "They don't want their reputation damaged if word gets out that they're struggling." He thought about his grandfather, who'd worked as a mechanic his whole life. How he taught him to love cars, to understand them inside and out. How he'd always said, "They might not let you in through the front door, but one day you'll own the building." His phone buzzed, a message from his West Coast friend in the car industry. "Just landed at the airport. Ready when you are." He smiled, remembering the security guard's hand on his shoulder, pushing him toward the door. The sales manager's dismissive wave. The way they'd all looked through him, not at him. They thought they were getting rid of a problem. Instead, they'd created their own hurricane. Opening his laptop, he started drafting a business plan. This wouldn't just be about buying a dealership. It would be about transformation. He thought about all the talented people who'd been turned away, judged before they could speak. All the dreams dismissed because someone didn't like the dreamer's appearance. His assistant popped her head in. "Your tail is here for the fitting." "Perfect timing," he said, standing up. Tomorrow, he'd return to Elite Motors, but not in a t-shirt and jeans. Not as a customer they could dismiss. This time, he'd walk in as their potential owner. He looked at his reflection in the office window. The same face that the dealership had judged so harshly looked back at him, but now there was a glint in his eyes. His grandfather had always told him another thing. Success isn't just about proving them wrong. It's about making sure they can't do the same thing to the next person. That night, as his team worked on the details, he thought about how different Elite Motors would be under his leadership. He wasn't interested in revenge. He wanted revolution. A place where every customer would be treated with respect, where talent would matter more than appearance, where prejudice wouldn't stand a chance against professionalism. Tomorrow would change everything. Not just for him, but for every person who'd ever been told they didn't belong. Sometimes the best way to break down a door isn't to knock. It's to buy the whole building. The morning sun glinted off Elite Motors' windows as 3 black SUVs pulled into the parking lot. This time, when the young tech CEO stepped out, he wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. Behind him emerged his lawyer, his financial advisor, and his friend from the West Coast luxury car industry. The security guard at the door, the same one who'd escorted him out 2 weeks ago, did a double take. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by confusion as he noted the CEO's transformation and his impressive entourage. "Good morning," the CEO said with a slight smile. "We have a meeting with the regional director." Inside, the showroom buzzed with the usual morning activity. The sales manager who dismissed him was at his desk, frowning at a computer screen. When he looked up and saw the group walking in, his coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. The CEO walked past him without a glance, his shoes clicking against the marble floor. The same floor he'd been forced to walk across in shame 2 weeks ago now felt like a red carpet. Behind him, he could hear the whispers starting, could feel the energy in the room shifting like a tide. The regional director was waiting in the conference room upstairs, along with 2 representatives from the parent company. Their faces showed surprise when they saw who had made the offer to buy the dealership. "Please, sit down," the regional director said, gesturing to the chairs. "I understand you have a proposal for us." The CEO's financial advisor handed out folders containing their offer and business plan. The numbers inside made the parent company representatives sit up straighter. It was above their asking price, with terms that would allow for a smooth transition. "As you can see," the CEO said, opening his own folder, "we're prepared to move quickly. My team has already reviewed your financials, and we have the funding secured." He paused, letting that sink in. "But I'd like to share something with you first." He told them about his visit 2 weeks ago, about the treatment he received, about watching other customers get immediate attention while he stood ignored. With each word, the regional director's face grew darker. "That's extremely concerning," the director said, shooting a worried look at the parent company representatives. They knew what this could mean. A discrimination lawsuit would be devastating for their brand. "I'm not here for a lawsuit," the CEO said, reading their thoughts. "I'm here because I see potential. This dealership has prime location, excellent inventory, but it's underperforming. I know why, and I know how to fix it." His friend from the West Coast pulled up sales figures from his own dealerships, showing how diversity in hiring had led to expanded market reach and record profits. The CEO laid out his vision. A dealership where every customer would be treated with respect, where staff would be trained in unconscious bias, where success would be measured not just in sales, but in customer experience. Through the conference room's glass walls, he could see the sales floor below. The same salespeople who'd ignored him were now stealing glances upward, wondering what was happening in this high-level meeting. "Your current asking price is fair," he said, turning back to the directors. "But my offer comes with a promise. In 1 year, this will be your highest performing location. I stake my reputation on it." The parent company representatives exchanged looks. They'd come expecting a standard business meeting. Instead, they'd found something much more valuable: a chance to turn a PR nightmare into a success story. "We need to make some calls," the regional director said finally, "but I think we can work something out." As they filed out to consult with their board, the CEO stood at the window, looking down at the showroom floor. The sales manager was still at his desk, probably wondering why his bosses were meeting with the man he had thrown out. Life had taught him that sometimes the biggest doors open right after the hardest rejections. In a few hours he would own this dealership, but more importantly, he would transform it into something new. A place where dreams weren't judged by appearances, where respect wasn't a privilege but a right. The real work was about to begin. Word spread through Elite Motors like wildfire. The whispers started at the front desk and rippled across the showroom floor. The man they'd thrown out 2 weeks ago wasn't just any customer, he was a tech millionaire, and he was about to become their new boss. The sales manager sat frozen at his desk, his morning coffee long forgotten. Through the glass walls of the conference room upstairs, he could see the signing ceremony taking place. Each stroke of the pen felt like another nail in the coffin of his comfortable world. The CEO's lawyer had drafted the final papers with remarkable speed. The parent company, eager to avoid any hint of scandal, had accepted the offer within hours. Now, as the regional director shook hands with their new owner, the atmosphere in the dealership crackled with nervous energy. The security guard who'd escorted him out stood awkwardly by the door, his usual confidence deflated. He watched as the group descended the stairs, their footsteps echoing in the unusually quiet showroom. Everyone pretended to be busy, but their eyes kept darting toward the procession. The regional director cleared his throat, calling everyone's attention. "I'd like to introduce you to the new owner of Elite Motors." He gestured to the young CEO, who stood before them in his impeccable suit, looking nothing like the suspicious character they'd profiled 2 weeks ago. The CEO stepped forward, his presence commanding the room. The same room where he'd been ignored, dismissed, and humiliated. But there was no trace of bitterness in his voice when he spoke. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice carrying across the showroom. "Some of you might remember me from my last visit." A few people shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. "That day taught me something important about this place, not just its problems, but its potential." He walked over to a gleaming sports car, running his hand along its smooth surface. "My grandfather was a mechanic. He taught me that cars aren't just machines, they're dreams. Every person who walks through that door carries a dream with them. Our job isn't just to sell cars, it's to help make those dreams come true." The sales manager, who'd finally gathered the courage to look up, found the CEO's gaze fixed directly on him. But instead of the anger or triumph he expected to see, there was something else: determination, purpose, and maybe even a hint of compassion. "I could stand here and talk about what went wrong during my last visit," the CEO continued. "But I'm more interested in what's going to go right from now on. This dealership has everything it needs to be extraordinary: prime location, fantastic inventory, and most importantly, a team that can learn and grow." He gestured to his West Coast friend, who stepped forward with a stack of folders. "Starting next week, we're implementing comprehensive training programs. Customer service excellence, inclusive sales practices, cultural competency, everything you need to make this the best luxury car dealership in the city." The tension in the room began to shift. Where there had been fear, curiosity started to bloom. A young saleswoman in the back raised her hand tentatively. "Sir, are you planning to replace the staff?" The CEO smiled. "I believe in second chances. I believe in transformation. But most importantly, I believe that people can surprise you when you give them the opportunity to be better." Looking around the showroom, he could see the impact of his words. The security guard stood a little straighter. The sales manager's shoulders relaxed slightly. Even the cleaning staff, usually invisible in their corners, were listening intently. "Today isn't about revenge," he concluded. "It's about revolution. Together, we're going to build something new here. A place where every dream gets a fair chance, regardless of who's doing the dreaming." As he finished speaking, A customer walked through the front door. A young woman in casual clothes, looking slightly nervous. The CEO watched as his new staff exchanged glances, old habits warring with new awareness. A test already, and he was ready to see how they'd handle it. 3 months into new ownership, Elite Motors looked different. Gone were the intimidating security guards at the door. Instead, a welcome desk greeted every customer with a warm smile. The showroom's harsh lighting had been replaced with softer, more inviting illumination that made every car gleam like a jewel. But the real changes went deeper than appearances. The sales manager, who'd once been so quick to judge, sat in the training room with the rest of the staff. On the screen, statistics showed how their new approach had already boosted sales by 30%. It's not just about selling cars anymore, the trainer explained, pointing to customer testimonials. It's about creating an experience where everyone feels valued. The CEO walked through his dealership daily, talking with staff, greeting customers, and making sure his vision was becoming reality. He noticed how the sales team now approached every customer with the same professional enthusiasm, regardless of what they wore or how they looked. The young woman who'd walked in on that first day, she bought a luxury SUV for her growing business. Now she regularly referred other entrepreneurs to Elite Motors, knowing they'd be treated with respect. One morning, the sales manager knocked on the CEO's office door. His hands were shaking slightly as he held the folder. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Inside the folder was a letter of resignation, but the CEO didn't accept it. Instead, he listened as the manager poured out his story about his own prejudices, his fears, and his desire to change. "I've been in this business 20 years, the manager said, wiping his eyes. "And I've been wrong for most of them. The way we treated people, the way I treated you. I can't change the past, but I want to help change the future." The CEO looked at the resignation letter, then handed it back. "I don't want your resignation," he said firmly. "I want your commitment. Help me train other dealerships. Show them what real change looks like." The transformation wasn't always smooth. Some employees resisted the changes, clinging to old habits. They left, replaced by a new generation of sales professionals who understood that respect and success went hand in hand. The training program expanded. Other luxury car dealerships sent their staff to learn. The CEO's phone rang constantly with inquiries about his methods. But he always pointed to his team, especially the sales manager who'd become the strongest advocate for change. One day, a young man in ripped jeans walked in, looking nervous. The sales manager approached him personally. "Welcome to Elite Motors," he said warmly. "How can we help make your dreams come true today?" The young man explained he'd just sold his startup. As the manager listened to his story, he caught the CEO's eye across the showroom. They shared a knowing smile. The circle was complete. That evening, after the showroom closed, the CEO sat in his office, looking at an old photo of his grandfather in his mechanic's uniform. "We did it, Grandpa," he whispered. "We changed more than just a dealership. We changed minds." On his desk lay the latest sales figures. Elite Motors was now the top-performing luxury car dealership in the region. But the number he was most proud of wasn't about sales. It was the perfect customer satisfaction score, earned by treating every dream as worthy, every customer as valuable. The security cameras showed the empty showroom, where tomorrow new stories would unfold. Stories of respect, of dreams, and of change that started with one man being brave enough to come back and make a difference. 1 year after the takeover, Elite Motors hosted a special event. The showroom buzzed with energy as local business leaders, industry professionals, and media gathered to hear about the dealership's remarkable transformation. The young CEO stood at the podium, looking out at the packed room. The sales manager sat in the front row, pride evident on his face. Behind him, the entire staff stood together, a diverse team that reflected the community they served. "A year ago," the CEO began, "I walked into this dealership as an unwanted customer. Today, I stand here to share how that moment changed not just this business, but our entire industry." The screens behind him lit up with impressive numbers. Elite Motors hadn't just survived, it had thrived. Sales had doubled. Customer satisfaction was at an all-time high. The dealership had become the go-to place for luxury cars in the region. But the CEO wasn't there to brag about profits. He gestured to a group of young entrepreneurs sitting near the front. "These are our latest customers. Each one came to us with a dream. Each one left with not just a car, but with their dignity and respect intact." The sales manager stood up next, his voice steady as he addressed the crowd. "I was part of the problem," he admitted. "I judged people based on how they looked, not who they were. But our new owner didn't fire me. Instead, he showed me a better way." The presentation switched to video testimonials. A young tech startup founder describing how she bought her first luxury car. A successful food truck owner sharing how the dealership helped him expand his fleet. Each story showed how Elate Motors had become more than just a car dealership. It was now a place where success stories began. "But we're not done," the CEO continued. "Today, I'm announcing the Elate Motors Leadership Program." He unveiled plans for a mentorship initiative, helping young entrepreneurs from underserved communities break into the luxury car industry. The regional director of the parent company stepped forward next. "What happened here wasn't just a business success," he said. "It's become a model for our entire network. Starting next month, every luxury dealership in our group will implement these training programs." As cameras flashed and reporters took notes, the CEO looked around the showroom. The same space where he'd once been humiliated was now a symbol of change. The security guard who'd escorted him out was now the head of customer relations, greeting everyone with genuine warmth. After the presentation, a young woman approached the CEO. "I saw you that day," she said quietly, "when they asked you to leave. I was a junior saleswoman then, too scared to speak up. Watching you come back, watching you change things, it gave me courage to stand up for what's right." The CEO smiled, remembering his grandfather's words about success being the best answer to doubt. But this was more than success, it was transformation. The dealership had become proof that change was possible, that prejudice could be overcome, that dignity could triumph over discrimination. As the event wound down, he walked through the showroom one last time that evening. The cars gleamed under the lights, but they weren't just machines anymore. Each one represented a potential dream, a future success story, a chance to prove that everyone deserves respect. A year ago, he'd walked out of these doors in shame. Now he'd turned that moment of humiliation into a movement for change. Elate Motors wasn't just selling luxury cars, it was selling possibility, proving that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, but getting better. The legacy would live on, not just in sales figures or customer reviews, but in every person who walked through those doors and found their dreams treated with respect. Because in the end, true luxury isn't about the cars you sell, it's about the dignity you give to every dream, every customer, every human being who dares to reach for something better.